Hello, lovelies. This is the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show. My name is Agnes van Rhijn. I'm the founder of Success on Your Own Terms and of the Women Who Makes Things Happen show. Today, it is my privilege to be interviewing the amazing Jen Turrell. As a financial personal trainer, Jen Turrell supports female entrepreneurs and self-employed women take control of their money so it doesn't control them. With 15 years of hard-earned and entrepreneurial experience, sorry for that, Jen has owned and run businesses in industries as diverse as agriculture, music, and special needs caregiving, technology, and finance. Jen's 6-week financial rehab and personal financial physical programs grant women access to freedom and power, finding their authentic voice by automating finances. Welcome, Jen. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Agnes. How are you?
I'm fine too. So Jen and I share something in common. I would almost say it's some kind of an obsession we both have, that we absolutely are obsessed about women being financially responsible and financially independent. So for me, it's one part of the work that I'm doing, but Jen has really made a specialty of it. So tell us more about your journey. How did you come to that?
Well, it came through the special needs journey I've done with my kids, really. Both of my kids have been diagnosed with autism. When my youngest was, it was shortly before her 3rd birthday that she was diagnosed with autism. And before that, I really hadn't had much experience at all with the special needs world, and especially special needs finance. And we live in rural Arizona, where there isn't an autism center. The closest one is 3 hours away. And we really had to learn a lot and sort of build our kids' program here, unless we wanted to sell up and move somewhere else, which wasn't much of an option because we run our family's cattle ranch here. That's our main source of income. So we learned a lot. I ended up learning a lot about the Medicaid system, the state funding system, about all different ways to fund these programs. And we did spend a lot of money ourselves getting our kids' programs together. Thankfully, I had support of family and friends and everything. So it's worked out okay for us. But then as I started doing autism mom mentoring with other moms who wanted to set up early intensive behavioral intervention programs for their own kids, I ended up doing a lot of financial counseling, because you have to do a lot of applications and figure out what you can afford to pay out of pocket, what you're eligible for in terms of grants and financial assistance. So that was where I started realizing that although I'm not a certified financial planner and I'm not an accountant, I have learned a lot about money and how to make things work. And I realized that a lot of women, we're not encouraged culturally to really step forward with finances. I feel like the overall culture is trained on us to spend money, like all of the advertising and everything you see on TV and in the grocery stores and everywhere. It's sort of aimed at women spending money. And the financial services industry has always been really angled at men, because it was about men talking to men about money, and men were the ones who handled everything. But now with current divorce rates and the fact that women live longer and often are more likely to outlive our savings, I think it's really important for women to have a handle on their money themselves, because whether they do end up divorced or outliving their spouse or are single all along, we need to know what's going on to take care of ourselves and our children if we have them.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think I've been talking about that a few times in interviews, about how surprised I was that as business owners, so many women are not, I would almost say, business conscious, and therefore financially conscious of the whereabouts of their business. So they have no idea what revenues they're generating. They have no notion of, a so-called bottom line or whatever. They tend to confuse the spendings that they have on their own and the business. So I think that it really is badly needed. And I remember that something like, I think it's already 35 years ago or so, that I remember friends of ours who got divorced, and that's exactly what she was saying. She was saying, I am so happy that I'm completely financially independent, because otherwise it would be a disaster for me. So yeah, your work is definitely badly needed. So before digging into how you help those women, etc., tell us more about you. I mean, I know a little bit more of your stories, but the listeners don't. So, what have you been doing before that?
Well, I was a musician for quite a while. During college and after college, I played in indie bands and had some indie record labels, which is, I met my husband, Stuart Anderson. He's British. I met him when my dad was on tour over there, and he had a record label as well. And when we got married, we combined them and played music for quite a long time. And then eventually we moved to Arizona and started running my family's cattle ranch. So it's been, a few different interesting steps, sort of nothing I planned. I never really planned on a number of those things, but I'm sure his family never thought he would be a cowboy, which he is now. And in the course of working with the other autism moms and stuff, I started a special needs business for a little while that was working on helping families start these programs, like I was saying that my kids did, in rural and underserved areas. And I published a book with our board certified behavior analyst, who's a psychologist as well, on sort of how to set these programs up when you don't have a framework for them. And we were working on creating an app, an iPhone app to help with data collection, because these programs are really data driven, which we did for a while. And then eventually neither of us are IT people, and technology kind of ended up passing us by. We realized we really needed an IT person involved. And a few other companies came up with something similar enough. We started inventing the app because no one else had done what we needed yet, which I always think is a great way to start a business. But during that time, I started writing for Daily Worth too on special needs finances. And in the midst of it, I started working with a few entrepreneurs. And I do feel like some of the answer to some of these problems of both of women taking time out to have kids and then taking time out to care for special needs children or family members or elderly parents is us running our own businesses from home. I recently read a fantastic book called The Feminine Mistake, which was written by a woman who read The Feminine Mystique when she was 13. And it's a fantastic book. Everyone should read it, I think. But her whole point is that the mistake women made by removing themselves from the workforce and reducing their earning potential for the rest of their life, regardless of how long they stay out of the workforce. You don't only miss wages during that time, you also miss opportunities for advancement and increases in salary over time. You have to come back at a reduced rate or at a lower position than you were in before you left the workforce. And I feel like it's happening so much now, and so many companies use independent contractors instead of full-time employees the way they used to, that really becoming an independent contractor and working on your own terms and possibly working from home, I feel like that's now our generation's answer to this issue of how do you care for family members who need care and still have a presence in the workforce and have the ability to earn income over your lifetime. So again, that's why I've ended up switching my focus a little from just special needs finances to looking at women who are entrepreneurs or self-employed. And like you said, a lot of women who have always either had a W-2 income or have been staying home and not had an income, when they start their businesses, they may never have done quarterly taxes before. They may never have run a payroll. If they had W-2 employment, that was always taken care of for them. So it's a real steep learning curve, especially if you launch in as a sole proprietor. So you don't really even necessarily have a full separate entity. You feel like your business is you. So it's very easy early on to mix accounts and mix funds and really not have an idea of whether you're making a profit or not, or how much you're spending. Sorry.
And forgetting that you will have to pay taxes afterwards.
Exactly. So that's why I've shifted this focus to entrepreneurs and self-employed women. And a number of the women I work with are still women who have special needs children, but also are running their own businesses or employing themselves from home.
So you made me think of something else, and that's a question I had for you at the very beginning that we met, because I've seen in the various groups, etc., comments, etc., that you're giving on people's questions, etc., the type of things that you're dealing with for women in the finance area, but how well does the work that you do, how well is it applicable to working worldwide with clients? I mean, you have specifically taxes, rules, etc., that allows that belong to the US, but how well is that adaptable to working with women anywhere, so that women who are anywhere know if they can come to you or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I've called myself a financial personal trainer is because I feel like there's a difference between the personal trainer you see at the gym who like weighs you and tells you what exercises to do and helps you work out, versus the doctor that you go to for your prescriptions and for your checkups and things like that. So I think of a CPA, your tax advisor, as the doctor. So regardless of what country or state you live in, you need to go to your CPA for your taxes and for those sorts of things. But you're not meeting with them more frequently at regular intervals necessarily to check on your goals and to set up. I mean, one of the things I really like to help women do is sort of set up these automated financial systems. Studies have shown here in the US at least that people who have access to a 401k plan through their employer, where money's taken out of their paycheck before they ever get the paycheck and it's saved, those are the people who save the most. And the reason you do it is you don't make a decision every paycheck to take money out and put it in. You make the decision once, and then every month for as long as it applies, that money goes in there. So those of us who are self-employed or entrepreneurial don't really have that option, because you don't have the 401k plan set up, and unless you set it up through your own company, like as a solo 401k or a solo Roth IRA. So that is possible, but early on especially, you probably don't have access to that. So the way I like to do it is, figure out paying yourself regularly, first of all, and then regularly setting aside that money right away before you spend it. Have one account that you spend out of, have another that you do taxes out of, have another that you do your operating costs, so that you make sure you are paying yourself something for one thing, and that you are saving some money, because even businesses like people need to have emergency funds. We all have moments when something comes up unexpected, and we don't always want to put it on credit cards, especially if you're in the process of paying off debt. You want to make sure you're saving at the same time so that the next big thing that comes up doesn't have to go on the credit card, so that your debt load just keeps going up and down and up and down. That isn't getting ahead, So what I work with women on is setting up the plan for how they'll get to their goals, their savings goals and their debt reduction goals and things like that. They still do have to go to a tax planner.
Yeah, of course.
So, in the US, even from state to state, especially state tax obligations are different. There's some, no income tax states. There are some that have breaks for corporations. Some have breaks for sole proprietors. So you really have to learn what's applicable to your region and state anyways. And I would say the same is true of different countries. It's still possible to work on the basic cash flow, how you want your cash to flow through your system, and then go to your tax planner to make sure that you're in line with all the tax regulations and laws.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting as well with the work you do, is that it's also working on their mindset, basically. It's approaching it from a completely different angle and systemizing a whole series of things that they were not specifically aware of, or at least had not implemented. So yeah, that's interesting. So let's see, before digging deeper into what you do with those women, what I'm interested in as well is your own journey. What do you consider as your successes to start with? Because this is all about women being successful.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was young, I wanted to make records. And I didn't really know how to do it. Like in college, I had a band and we didn't know how to get on a big label or anything like that. So we had a friend record us, and I put some money up front and we made a record. And that's kind of been how I've done things all along. you know, not knowing how to reach the higher echelons of some industry, I've just kind of done some research and started things. And I've never gone for investors or big funding with anything. I've just kind of always bootstrapped it. And some of it's that DIY punk ethic from doing indie music, I think. But I also think it helps you not get in trouble with enormous debt doing it that way. I did take out school loans, you know, so I did have debt at one point, and, you know, we do have a mortgage on our house, and I do have a car that I got a really good rate on, so we've continued to pay our payments on that. But I feel like planning things out to pay for themselves stage by stage has kind of allowed me to not take on huge loads of debt throughout my life, and I've been really grateful for that. I feel like that is something that, again, the way our culture and our society works, it really does encourage us to go into debt, and it's kind of a trap, you know. I mean, of course, there are times you have to spend money, especially in starting a business and starting things up. But I think that the more you can plan in early stage sales and not taking on huge loads of debt, the better. I know people like to make a huge leap a lot of times into a whole new level, and will spend a lot of money to hire someone or to you know, bring on a team or something. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Obviously, that works in a lot of industries, but it just hasn't been the way that I've done it. So it's kind of allowed me to feel successful in small ways sooner, I think, you know, by being able to get profitable at least a little sooner without taking on, you know, huge debt loads. So that's made me feel successful throughout, even though I've never gone from, you know, 0 to 6 figures in a month or anything like that. You know, you hear these stories of massive launches or whatever, and I haven't experienced that. It's always been smaller, slow, steady growth in different ways. And because we've kept our music label going, we no longer tour or really play in bands like we used to, but we still have income coming in through iTunes and through selling records. You know, and the book that I wrote with autism, that, you know, it still chucks along. It was never a bestseller, but I think the people who benefit most from it are able to find it from the ways we have it listed. So I've kind of liked building in these different little income streams over time. It would be great to have some massive success someday, but I also feel like it's manageable, you know, just starting things, seeing them through, putting in a system so that they can keep trucking, and then you can focus on something new too. So I feel successful in that way.
Seen from the outside, I really am very impressed, and I would certainly consider that a success, that you managed to handle things that are so apart, so different. I mean, music, the ranch, your girls with their special needs, your business. I wonder how you do it. Don't you consider that a success?
Yeah, it is juggling. And to be honest, I usually spend the most time on my kids and their program. We, you know, because we do it here without, you know, an autism center established, we end up interviewing, hiring, and training the staff that work with them. We usually have 4 to 5 people between home and school therapy. And that's more employees than anywhere else. So really managing the home staff, you know, I do HR, I take care of hiring and firing and scheduling and all of that. So yeah, the other thing, and my husband mainly manages the ranch. I mean, I do the financial part, but I'm not out there with the cowboys every day, which has allowed me to take some time to do these other things. So that's another thing with trying to grow this new side of the business, is I am a little limited on how much time I can put into it at once. So again, I've been perfectly fine with it being sort of a slow, steady addition to everything else that I'm doing. And it is a reason I have to keep my one-on-one hours pretty low, because I do have to do so much with the other businesses, but I really enjoy it. I mean, it was like with doing the Autism Mom mentoring, I still do keep in touch with our local autism group. Now that it's summer, we're going to start having barbecues at our house again to get the kids together and things. But yeah, I try to keep things manageable.
Good for you. So what did you find the most challenging in your journey?
Um, Honestly, the special needs stuff has been the most challenging, and it's been the steepest learning curve. It's been really interesting. I feel like I've learned so much about myself and my whole family, really, because while no one else in my family has, disabilities like my kids do, I can see a lot of sort of minor traits in both myself and, hey, Brad, sorry, someone just came. I hear the other dog barking. Don't bark. Okay. I have one of the dogs here with me.
Okay.
Let's see here. Hi. That's Care Bear. Yeah, I can see some of the traits in my kids that I've always thought of as kind of little quirks that I have, or that my mom and my dad have, as sort of really full-blown symptoms in my children. You know, there's some qualities of obsessive compulsiveness in autism, and perfectionism, needing things to be just so. A lot of people in my family have that. We have a lot of artists, scientists, and musicians in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting looking at the genetic makeup of the whole family through this lens of autism, and not thinking of it entirely as a bad thing. I mean, some parts of it are amazing. The ability to focus single-mindedly on one thing for extended periods of time, that's something really required in both music and a lot of science, you know, doing experiments, noticing tiny variations and differences in things. I feel like my kids are really attuned to things that most of us don't pay any attention to. So that's been interesting, and also forward thinking with what their lives will be like in the future. That takes a lot of my time too, you know, wanting to figure out how to build a life with them that can be, you know, full and rich and exciting, and where they'll have more options than hanging up clothes at the Goodwill. That's one of my goals. I want my kids to really have some good options for what they want to do with their lives, and not be limited by what the educational system says that they can or can't do, or what employers say they can and can't do. You know, that's, again, part of the reason I feel so strongly for women starting their own businesses, and especially caregiving parents, is that we can start businesses that focus on the qualities that are best in our kids, on their strengths, instead of penalizing them for their weaknesses.
Yeah. And I think that comparatively, from what I'm seeing, it is already so much better in the US than it is in Europe, in France, for instance, where it's really a cultural thing to be focusing only on what doesn't work. So yeah, that's really challenging for children. Yeah, it's so difficult. I've seen some incredible things with my daughter as well when she was studying, and where at some point she was in an international school, and they were complaining about the bad grades that the international English teacher was giving them. And the type of answer that she gave was that well, you don't think that with the level you have, you will ever make it in any big university. Wow. Boom. Thank you for the motivation. So yeah, it's challenging, very difficult. So good for you that you focus on what works. Yeah. So let's revert back, because I'm conscious of time as well, on the work you do with women entrepreneurs. So how do you work with them? What is it? How can they work with you?
Well, there are a couple of different ways. For one-on-one work, I do have a full finance physical package, which I really like doing. I send them a workbook ahead of time, and I never ask for any passwords, any ID, any account numbers, nothing like that. But I do ask them to write down the real amounts that they spend and that it comes in. So the workbook gets sent out. They fill out basically what their monthly cash flow looks like. If it's wildly irregular, I ask them to take an average out of 6 months to see what it looks like, so we can really work on it. And then one of the great things I find is, as we do go through the process of trying to automate their bills and everything, we usually can eliminate quite a bit and then negotiate. This idea of negotiating your bills, especially things like your cell phone bill and your interest rates and all that. I got that from Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, several years ago. I'd never thought of calling up my credit card company and saying, I want a lower interest rate. Can I have one? And the shock that they gave me one, like, oh, I can just ask for these things and I can get better rates. That's fantastic. So I take them through eliminate things that you don't really need or aren't, significantly improving your life. We try to get rid of anything possible. Then we negotiate anything we can. And then we automate what's left in terms of your regular bills that recur every month. So that way, kind of like the savings, you never run out of money for it because you have that happen first before you spend. So you pay your bills and you do your savings first. And I also have them call all the companies so that we batch the bills into 2 times a month, roughly even. Because even if you're an entrepreneur and have your regular income, I still think it's helpful to have your month balanced out, rather than have like all your bills at the beginning of the month, for most people at least.
Yeah.
So we go through that process. And then depending on what their business is and how it works, like the personal finance physical, it's mainly focused on your personal finances. But for some people, that is their business finances too. Mm-hmm. Like we're talking about, if you're a sole proprietor and you really haven't made a separate entity for your business, which means you're probably doing a Schedule C on your taxes. If you're in the US, I realize that doesn't apply to France or England. It's just how you declare your income on your taxes. So if that's the case, then we look at that as well. And then we do an action list for things that they need to get done. And we have a couple weeks of follow-up. I check up, see how things are going. So on the call, we make the plan for what happens. And then I check in to see how it goes, what barriers have come up and what they haven't been able to do. For people who need more hand-holding, I have a 6-week program. And basically with that, we do 1 call a week for 6 weeks. And each week we sit down and we actually do it together. You have your accounts open. Yeah. We automate things. We eliminate different bills. We call the companies, I'm not on the phone because it's your account, but we make sure it's done each thing. So by the end of the 6 weeks, pretty much you have a really nice flowing cash flow system that is doing what you want it to do. You have the savings goals figured out, your debt reduction figured out. We know how long it'll take to pay off different things as long as you don't put more debt on there. So those are the 2 main ways for one-on-one. I have also recently been doing power hour sessions, during which we either mainly focus on figuring out monthly targets and sales for the rest of the year, say, or if you really need help just focusing on debt for the whole hour, we'll just crank through all your numbers, get everything figured out. It's basically whatever you want to focus on for an hour. And it's not on my website right now, but I've been offering it in a few of the entrepreneurial groups because that seemed to be what people wanted, was rather than a longer program, let's just get things figured out. And then if they need help in a few months later, we'll talk again. My goal really is to have people not need me that long. I would like to just get it set up to where it's doing what you want and you don't have to think about it that much. Your bills are paid, your income's coming in and your taxes, we put a day on the calendar where you transfer into your tax account each month. And then unless you have a major shift into, sort of a different realm, hopefully you wouldn't need me. You'll always have to do tweaks and monitor everything to make sure it's going right. But that's kind of my goal, is just for you to feel in control of what's going on in your financial life.
I like that it's hands-on. That's really practical what you're doing. I don't know if you know, but I am a money breakthrough method certified coach as well, and that's a module that I have in my Successful Women Academy Bootcamp. It's part of my signature program as well, where we work a lot on the mindset, the money story and the mindset to go with it, etc. But the hands-on aspect of things, I work with it basically only once a year, or usually once a year, at the beginning of the year when I do private VIP days where, we do the whole financial business planning, and then it's really down to earth. Because the way I approach it, it is looking at the personal stuff as well. I'm putting it together. So it's really useful that there you go with your sleeves up, and we'll really deal with everything. That's great. So so before I forget, where can women find you?
At jenturrell.com. That's JENTURRELL.com.
Do you have any specific offer or whatever going on, if there is anything?
There's a free opt-in right now, which is a 5 Steps to Debt Reduction course, which it basically helps you go through that eliminate, negotiate process, and then set up the basic automation through an email series. Again, it's not tailored specifically to any one person. It's general because it's for whoever signs up for it. So if you go through that and want more help, there's links you can click. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I recently got Invisalign and I'm finding it ties my tongue a little, but there are links that you can click to contact me. I'm always happy to communicate with people by email, or if you want to actually work with me. I do also have a 30-minute free checkup service that's on my website. So if you just want to do a quick call, we can kind of briefly go over things. It's mainly to see if I'm someone that you want to work with in the future. But, you know, I'm happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about during that 30 minutes. We can try to do a little bit of money coaching, but it's really hard to get beyond getting to know each other in 30 minutes. So it's a little limited in that way, but I still really enjoy doing those calls and meeting people and finding out what's going on.
Great. So what tips would you give to women who would want to start their business? What would you recommend?
Well, I think being really clear on your own personal financial situation before you start. Know where you're at, know what your debt load is. I also think the process of validating your idea and getting an early sale is way more important than building an expensive website and getting your business cards and all that stuff before you have it. Because one thing I've worked with a number of women is they're trying to get their business structure and their tax structure and everything figured out. But if you haven't actually started selling, sometimes you really have to pivot and change what you're doing. So I think before you even craft a real offering, is talk to the people who you want to work with. Figure out who you want to work with, who is that person, find them, know them in real life, ask them to coffee, talk about what you want to offer them, find out if it's something they really want, and if they say yes, have PayPal set up and say, okay, I'll send you an invoice. We can get started in 2 weeks. I'm building this thing. I'll have it for you. So I think really the only way to really validate your idea is a sale, cash. Like if people say it's a good idea, a lot of people are nice. They want to be encouraging. So I think finding the people who really want it and making sure that they will actually pay money for it before spending a lot of money on your whole business structure. That's probably my top tip that I would give for women starting businesses.
Yeah, I definitely share that. I think that the clarity and the confidence is key. And you were talking about your power session, but my power session is exactly about that. It is don't bother setting up a website, etc. You need to start with a niche, start with an ideal client, and it's by working with them that you will figure out if and you will fine tune and getting out there with an ideal client to start with, fine tuning it and having an offer and a pricing strategy, and go and get them. Go get there. Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, I can't agree more.
Product-based businesses, but still, I think it's worth making a few of the product and presenting them to people. Make them the handmade version or whatever before you get a manufacturing deal or something like that. Just really make sure what you have is what people want.
Yeah, absolutely.
The intersection of what you love doing and what they want to get. It's not worth making something you hate, but it's also not worth making something you love that no one wants.
Of course. Makes sense. I'm conscious of time. It goes so quickly. I started doing those interviews for 1 hour, and I ended up thinking that it was too long for people to listen to it, but while I go through it goes so quickly. So anyway, just to let the listeners know about what is upcoming. Usually I am giving a first information about who will be next on the show. And unfortunately, on June 8th, I can't tell yet because I had somebody planned, but who just canceled. She had to postpone. So I'm looking quickly for a replacement. So I will let you all know soon who will be the person I will be interviewing on June 8th. And if you want to find the archives of the interviews, they are on my website, anyesvanrijn.com, ANYESVANRHIJN.com, and there is a tab called WWMTH, Woman Who Makes Things Happen, interview series. And you find all the interviews there. So in any event, Jen, I've really enjoyed this. And thank you so much. And well, good luck with everything. And thank you for being on the show. Thanks.
I really enjoyed it.
Bye.
Bye.